In a town where silence became a blanket of terror, an ancient curse awakens, erasing children from existence. The answer lies not in fear, but in the forgotten echoes of the past. The sun had set, and a cold blanket of darkness covered the quiet town of Riverwood. The light from the streetlights flickered, casting long and ghostly shadows on the cobblestone streets. No one dared to go outside. The air was filled with an unnatural silence, a silence that weighed on the chest and made hearts beat faster. The curtains of the houses were drawn, and through the cracks, the frightened eyes of the inhabitants peered into the night. The tension had started to build a week ago when the first child disappeared. Young Thomas, a cheerful and lively boy, vanished without a trace while playing in the woods. The authorities had searched tirelessly, but they found nothing, not even a footprint. Thomas's father, the town blacksmith, aged 10 years in a single night. His gaze, once full of warmth, had become empty and filled with a profound sadness. 3 days later, another child, little Lily, met the same fate. She was picking flowers in a nearby meadow when, suddenly, she was gone. Her basket, full of daisies, was all that remained. Terror spread like a plague. Parents didn't let their children leave their homes. The children's laughter that used to fill the streets had been silenced, replaced by a chilling quiet. Sheriff Brody, a rugged man with a weathered face, was on the verge of despair. He had tracked every corner of the town and its surroundings, but it was as if the children had vanished into thin air. There were no clues, no witnesses, no suspects. Rumor had it that an ancient curse had awakened, a fairy tale that grandmothers used to tell to scare children, but which now, all of a sudden, seemed too real. They spoke of a creature of the night that fed on innocence. No one wanted to say its name, but everyone thought of the Shadow Hunter, a legendary figure who, according to the legend, took away naughty children. But the children of Riverwood weren't like that. Fear had paralyzed the town, but one person refused to give up. Old Silas, a local historian, believed that the answer wasn't in the darkness of the forest, but in the past. He spent his nights in the dusty town library, searching for an answer in the old tomes and manuscripts. While the other residents of Riverwood hid, Silas delved deeper into the town's history. He discovered that the oldest records spoke of a plague of disappearances similar to the current one, a phenomenon that repeated itself every 100 years. He found an old town map, worn and with annotations in an ancient language. The marks on the map pointed to 3 places: the forest, the meadow, and a place that no longer existed, an old water well that had been buried decades ago. The stories of the creature became more specific. They called it the Echo Eater, a being that did not take the children, but rather erased their existence. It made them disappear from the memory of others, as if they had never existed. Sheriff Brody, skeptical of Silas's theories, focused on the criminal investigation. He found a small wooden doll in the meadow where Lily disappeared. The doll was an exact replica of Lily, and its eyes were strangely realistic. Thomas's father, in his desperation, decided to take matters into his own hands. He entered the forest with his old rifle, determined to find his son or to avenge his loss. That night, the wind howled like a lament. A strange sound of bells resonated in the town, a sound no one had heard before. It was a somber, almost hypnotic melody that seemed to come from nowhere. In the library, Silas felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold of the night. The scrolls fell from his hands. The melody of the bells seemed to resonate in his mind, calling to him. Outside, Thomas's father also heard the sound. He raised his rifle, his eyes searching the darkness of the forest. The melody grew louder, and suddenly he saw something. 2 small red lights blinking among the trees. The lights moved slowly toward him, and the melody of the bells turned into a deafening chorus. Fear invaded him, but his anger was stronger. He fired his rifle, but the lights simply vanished. Silas, in an act of desperate bravery, decided that the only way to understand the curse was to follow its call. He left the library and headed toward the sound of the bells, which guided him to the center of the town, to the place where the old well used to be. As Silas approached the center of the town, the sound of the bells became almost deafening. The streetlights flickered frantically, and the shadows danced around him like ghosts. The air felt thick and charged with a dark energy. The site of the old well was now a plaza with a commemorative monument. It was a focal point of the town, a gathering place. But tonight, it was empty, except for a strange mist that swirled around the base of the monument. Silas stopped. The melody of the bells was not a call. It was a warning. It was a melody of mourning, a song of farewell. In the mist, he saw figures. They were not people but translucent silhouettes of children playing at the well. They were Thomas and Lily and many others. Silas's heart ached at the sight of them. They looked happy, but their happiness was a hollow echo, an illusion. They were trapped in a time loop, reliving their last moments before their existences were erased. Suddenly the mist dissipated and the silhouettes disappeared. The bells stopped. A silence even deeper than before took hold of the night, and then a voice that sounded like a crying child, but was immensely ancient and full of malice. The voice addressed Silas, calling him by his name. It said that the curse was a cycle of hunger, that the Echo Eater needed to feed on innocence to survive, and that the well was the gateway. In the forest, Thomas's father had returned home, pale and trembling. His weapon felt heavy and useless in his hands. What he had seen was not an animal or a monster. It was his own memories, the laughter of his son. The red lights were his eyes. Sheriff Brody had arrived at the blacksmith's house. Thomas's father told him what he had seen, but the sheriff did not believe him. He thought the man was hallucinating from grief. Brody returned to his office, frustrated. But just as he sat at his desk, he noticed something. A small wooden doll, identical to the one he found in the meadow, was sitting in his chair. Its eyes, two small red beads, stared at him. The doll was not there before. Brody threw it on the floor, feeling a chill, and as the doll lay on the ground, the bells began to ring again. This time, the melody came from nowhere. It came from the doll. In the center of town, Silas didn't move. The ancient voice was gone. But the chill it left in the air was a constant reminder of its presence. He realized he was not fighting a ghost or a monster, but something that fed on the essence of life. The answer was in the well. It was a door, a portal. And the creature didn't take the children. It consumed them. It erased their lives from existence to make room for its own. The dolls, the red lights, everything was a distortion, a reflection of what the Echo Eater had already consumed. Suddenly, a hooded figure appeared from the mist. It was not a child, nor Thomas's father, nor the sheriff. It was a female figure, old and hunched over. Grandma Rose, the one who used to tell the stories of the shadow hunter. Grandma Rose didn't seem scared. Her face, weathered by time, was filled with a deep sadness. She approached the monument and touched it, and a faint blue glow emanated from it. "It's not a fairy tale, boy," she told Silas in a raspy voice. "It's a legacy. My grandmother told my mother, and my mother told me. The curse cannot be broken, it can only be appeased." Meanwhile, in the office, Sheriff Brody was paralyzed with terror. The melody of the bells came from the doll. The doll slowly stood up, as if an invisible hand were guiding it. Its eyes glowed brightly in the darkness. The sheriff couldn't move. His muscles were rigid with fear. The doll moved across the room, its little wooden feet making a dull, rhythmic sound. The melody of the bells intensified, filling the office and making the window panes tremble. Brody saw his reflection in the window, and for a moment, it wasn't him. It was a small, scared child, his eyes filled with tears. That child was him. It was his own innocence that was being attacked. The creature not only took the children, it took the part of them that existed in the memories of others. Sheriff Brody screamed, a cry of pure terror that was drowned out by the sound of the bells. The doll stopped in front of him, and its red eyes met his. In that instant, Brody felt himself fading, being erased. While Sheriff Brody felt his own existence fading, Silas and Grandma Rose approached the well. Grandma Rose took a small cloth bag from her pocket, filled with what appeared to be small stones. "The devourer doesn't take life," she whispered. "It takes the memory of life. It feeds on the innocence, on the joy that children leave in the world. The well is its door, and the bell is the echo of its call." Grandma Rose threw the stones into the well. As they fell, each one emitted a faint blue glow, the same one that had emanated from the monument. The well seemed to come alive, the mist swirling more intensely. In his office, Sheriff Brody felt a reprieve. The doll froze in place, its red eyes losing their glow. The sound of the bells ceased. The terror remained, but the erasure had stopped. Silas looked at Grandma Rose, confused. "What were those stones?" he asked. She smiled sadly. "They are memories. The people of the town, throughout the centuries, have been giving their most cherished memories, their echoes, to appease the creature. So the Echo Eater not only takes our memories, But it also makes us give them to it, Silas said. It's a never-ending cycle. The devourer needs joy to survive, but joy cannot be forced, Grandma Rose explained. It has to be a gift, a sacrifice. The children it takes are those whose memories are the strongest, the brightest. The bells are the signal that it is choosing its next meal. Silas understood the macabre truth. The echo-eater was not a senseless beast. It was a hungry creature that, in a twisted way, depended on humanity for its sustenance. And the well was its banquet table. Sheriff Brody, still in shock, noticed that the child's reflection had disappeared from the window. His reflection was again that of a tired man, but his eyes were filled with a new understanding. He was no longer a skeptic. In the plaza, Silas watched Grandma Rose throw the last stone into the well. The blue glow intensified, creating a vortex of light. Then, with one last chime, the vortex closed. The well became inert again. The night, once more, became silent. The next morning, a silence even stranger than that of the night hung over Riverwood. The sun was shining, but there was no trace of Thomas or Lily. No one seemed to remember their names or their faces. For the town, it was as if they had never existed. Thomas's father, the blacksmith, was at his forge. His eyes, once full of pain, were now those of a calm and normal man. His son had not disappeared. He simply had never had one. His memory had been erased. Sheriff Brody woke up in his office with the small wooden doll on the floor. He didn't remember how it had gotten there. He picked it up, and for a moment it seemed vaguely familiar. Then he left it on his desk and headed home. The trail of the children had gone cold, and the people of the town were no longer worried. Silas, however, remembered. He remembered the sadness in Thomas's father's eyes, Lily's doll, and the ancient voice that called him by his name. Grandma Rose also remembered. The two of them were the only ones who held the truth. Over the course of the days, life in Riverwood returned to normal, but it was a strange and empty normal. It was a town without a history, without the echo of the disappeared children. It was as if a part of its soul had been ripped out. Grandma Rose explained to Silas that the curse was not a punishment, but a form of balance. The echo-eater was a guardian of memory, a being that made sure memories did not weigh too heavily on the world. But in turn, it had an insatiable hunger. The well, the portal, was now a place of offering. Every 100 years the townspeople would gather in the plaza in secret to throw their memories into the well. It was a painful ritual, a sacrifice, but the only way to prevent the echo-eater from taking the memory of their children. Silas understood. The intrigue and mystery would not be solved with force, but with acceptance. It was not a horror story, but the history of a macabre legacy. The story of Riverwood, of its curse and its mysterious echo-eater, was not written in Silas's books. Instead, it was passed down from generation to generation, whispered on nights of fear, as a warning and a guide. The terror was gone, replaced by a shared secret. Riverwood lived, but at a price. And in the depths of the earth, the echo-eater slept, waiting, feeding on forgotten memories, until the century-long cycle began again. And so ends the story of Riverwood, a town that learned to live with its dark secret, a place where the echo of memory is a price too high to pay. The terror is gone, but the mystery remains. If this story gave you chills, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, so you do not miss our next tale. Like the video if the mystery hooked you, and comment us below with what you think happened to Thomas and Lily. And if you dare, share this video with someone who isn't afraid of the dark. Until our next enigma.